Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here is the host of The Pleasure Zone, sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and holistic health practitioner, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. So today's conversation is going to be about something that, for one, I know a lot of people who are experiencing cortisol issues, right? So whether you have excessive cortisol or you have cortisol insufficiency, um, I happen to know a ridiculous amount of people in both of those categories, but mostly excess cortisol. I only know of two people that have uh, insufficiency of cortisol to the level of where their body doesn't actually produce it. And one of them is a friend of mine, my best friend from kindergarten. She has that, and so she shout out to Jill. She actually has a podcast called the Pickle Podcast where she talks about all of her journey. Anyway, giving a shout out to her. She's not on Inspired Choices Network, but she actually was one of the inspirations for this show because she was doing a talk about cortisol. And then another friend of mine who is a nutritionist was also doing talks about cortisol. And then after I saw those, I started to see all these other people talking about cortisol. And then I saw like my feed got filled with talks on cortisol. So I was like, am I the only person not talking about cortisol? Well, I need to jump on this train, kids. So I'm going to be talking about that today. I'm going to jump on that cortisol train. So I think for a lot of times people are like, well, they've heard about cortisol, but they don't really know what it is. We'll talk about what it is and what's going on because whether you know it or not, when cortisol takes over, it can rob you of connection. It can rob you of intimacy. It can even take away your ability to feel pleasure. Isn't that? It's just like so sad that it can do that. And cortisol, because it is the stress hormone, if you're feeling overly stressed, you might choose to have sex in order to get some of that cortisol going down. However, a lot of people, that's the last thing they want to do. They often crash, or if they are having sex, it's going to be a quickie just to get like some burn off some cortisol, but it doesn't equal connection because when you have super high cortisol and you just want to burn it off, what happens with the body is it's just going to be in fight or flight, and you'll have sex that's fight or flight sex, which isn't the most connective sex because for the most part, when people are in fight or flight, they're not feeling like connecting and they're not present in their bodies and they're not able to connect on a deeper level. Do you get where I'm going with this? We're going to have a big conversation about this today, guys. And why is that? One of the reasons is that I actually talk a lot about health and bodies and sex and intimacy in my practice, in my daily life, and in my what I offer to the world. So I am a holistic health practitioner. What does that even mean? Well, I use a lot of different things in my practice. Uh, I draw from a lot of different things that I've learned, courses that I've taken, certifications, whatever you want to call it. I draw from those, and I'm a body worker as well. So I actually do somatic movement on bodies called the mitzvah technique, which there are like 20 practitioners in the world who may be 40 by now, that maybe some have graduated. It's not a fast course. The one that I did was luckily I have a mother who also is a mitzvah teacher, so she became my mentor, and also I apprenticed with her for 3 years. I worked on everybody she worked on. I learned everything she knew. Plus, I worked with all of her, not all of her colleagues. I worked with a handful of her colleagues to also learn what they did that was different than what she did. And because it is kind of an art, so you kind of add your own thing to it. And now I kind of do my own thing with it because again, it is a kind of an art in that the way that you do it. There are basics, just like art, there's color theory, but then you add your own vibe to it. So I love working on bodies. And one of the things that I love about that is that when you work on a body and you help it to be aligned, it also de-stresses the body. So a body that is not in alignment, physical alignment, where like if your neck is off a lot, your cortisol shoots up. Your body actually thinks that it's ready for warfare. You could have a stance where you look like you're always ready to fight, shoulders rounded, a forward, head in. If you ever notice, boxers have that stance. It's like your fighting stance, right? There's also other stances. And when you learn martial arts, you don't do that. But boxing, to get ready to box, you have that kind of a stance. And then you might also notice like when runners run, they'll kind of like often put their head forward. So there's that jutting your head forward as a response to like moving forward, sometimes moving forward super fast, but you can see it. I can tell you this much, you can see in a body when there's high cortisol. The more you work on bodies and the more you get your hands on them, you can actually see as a person got generally you can tell more like high cortisol because low cortisol, as much as the person will have certain things going on with their like their muscle tension and stuff like that, you can see it more high cortisol because often a person will have kind of a bit of a like a I think it's called a buffalo hump or like a dowager's lump, like right in between the shoulder blades. There's like a lump that happens, and there starts to be more of a increased fatty tissue in that area. That is one of the things that happens with high cortisol. You can see it in either people's sleep reports, like if you're taking a really long health history of them or personal history, you'll find that they'll probably report having really bad sleep habits. So there's a lot of things that will indicate that. And we're going to talk about the difference between really high cortisol, really low cortisol, where we should be at, how do we know what's going on, what's toxic levels, what's the difference between normal and toxicity, how is it defined, how do we know what we got, do we have it, maybe we don't, right? And what can you do if you do have really high cortisol to start to detox that? Um, in terms of increasing, like with somebody with, say, for example, Addison's, like the friend I have whose body doesn't produce cortisol, she could probably work out all she wants to try and get that fight or flight going. Her body still won't produce it because it just doesn't produce it. So she has to supplement that. Like she gets not as a vitamin. It's like I think she takes something anyway. It's not about uh it's not about her life because she can tell you all about that on her show. And I mention her because I've been wanting to have her on my show, but I'm also waiting for her to have a time where her body isn't in crisis. So, and I may be on her show soon as well. All right. So, why we're talking about cortisol is again because I've seen it a lot coming up, pumping up in my feed on social media, and also because it's actually quite important. And there are things that we can do to start to regulate our cortisol if you are in high stress environments, if you don't know how to navigate that situation before you end up having long-term conditions, chronic conditions, um, life altering conditions, it would be really good to be able to find out what you can do. So I'm going to do my best to provide that information. I want you to know I'm not a doctor. This is not about giving you prescriptions. This is not about giving you medical advice. I'm giving you information. If the information feels like you want to move forward with it, by all means, if you want to work with your naturopath, if you want to work with somebody in the natural health field, that's one route. If you want to go allopathic, go see your doctor or your nurse practitioner, whatever your medical provider is. If you want to see both, go right ahead. If you're curious about what I do and want to know if I can assist, happy to get on a call with you. My first consultations are free. So, yeah, just giving you some options, guys. I don't talk a lot about health stuff on here, even though that is my one of my main bread and butters and the main thing I do with my clients, but it often leads to sex and intimacy coaching, and sometimes vice versa. Like people have sex and intimacy, they come to me for sex and intimacy coaching, but they find that we need to look at other things that hadn't been considered yet in their health. So I find they go in tandem. It's just how I interpret the world. Sex and intimacy and health, they go in tandem. And one of the reasons is because you can tell a lot about somebody's hormone levels, about how they respond to sex. And that's aside from whether they have preferences, like, or how they identify. Like, they might just not desire sex and they maybe never have. Maybe there's been, past traumas and things like that. I've done a lot of shows on trauma, so you can go back and listen to those too. We will talk a little bit about that, but I'm not going to dive deep on that today. All right. So I love talking about this stuff because I feel like there is just never enough information out there. And sometimes, you get on, you start talking, and all of a sudden, I don't know about your brains, but my brain starts to do this thing where I'll go off on tangents. And I don't know, I've never been diagnosed ADHD, but I was in special classes for the smart kids. Just letting you know, we were like a strange little crew of kids who got work done really fast and just multitasked, and um yes, couldn't focus very well, so had to do 5 things at once. And one of the things that I do love to do is to be able to work with people on so many different things. So where was I going with that is that I love to share that information because my brain will operate in funny ways to be able to connect certain dots that a lot of people don't see. And I might connect some weird dots, and then I might come up with information that's surprising. Um, I always thought like my grandpa was like Dr. House, but the older I get, I start to think I'm a bit strange like Dr. House, and I start to see weird, strange connections. And I say that because like tonight I was just started to rewatch Dr. House before the show, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of operate like him, like totally out of the, well, wait, there is no box. Totally out of the box where there is no box. Yeah. So I can be a bit like that, for sure. And again, I'm not a doctor, not claiming to be one. I am a holistic health practitioner, so I do work with bodies in a very different way. I look at you holistically, which means what's going on in your life? How are you emotionally, physically? What's going on? What's going on in, like, have you had any reports on your blood work? What's going on there? Have you had any other things going on spiritually? Are you feeling disconnected? Like, all these things matter to me. And I look at your posture and see how you're doing because that can tell a lot. All right, kids, we're legit jumping into a super fun conversation about cortisol tonight. And I just want to give you, before we go to break, I think it would be helpful for you to know what is cortisol. I'm a bit of a nerd, and I want to give you guys the, the explanation of like, where does cortisol come from? It originates in the adrenals. It specifically originates in something called the zona fasciculata. So fascia, fasciculata, fasciculata. That's how I say it. Don't know how other people say it, but I always like when other people say it different. And I'm like, okay, I say it my own way. The zona fasciculata layer, which is on top of the kidneys. So, and that is all regulated by, I don't know if you guys have heard of the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, HPA. There's a lot of people talking about that these days too. That is where we get like the signal of the fight or flight. This is where we get all of that information going on. Um, and cortisol itself is synthesized from cholesterol, and it's essential for managing things like metabolism, blood sugar, blood pressure, and immune function. It's really important, right? So, like that friend I have that I was telling you about, that her body doesn't produce cortisol, really hard for her to have all of these other things regulated. So, and she's still alive, which is amazing. I love that. I don't think that they had predicted that for her. All right, guys. We are going to head to the first commercial break. I wanted to just let you know, where does cortisol even frickin' come from? And we'll start talking about different things about cortisol, excess cortisol, excessive, and then insufficient. We'll talk about those things. We'll talk about how that affects your sex life, how that affects your libido, what we can do to navigate some of that, some strategies. So yeah, join me on that. So you're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seeker. So we're talking about cortisol. What is it and where does it come from? And we kind of chatted about the little bit where it comes from. The little bit of where it comes from is it comes from your adrenals and the zona fasciculata, that word. That word that I probably don't say right, but does it really matter? Yeah, fasciculata. Well, anyways, it looks like it should be fasciculata. So that's where it comes from. What does it do? Well, one of the things it does is that it is part of releasing certain hormones, stress signals in the body. And we need these stress signals. Like if you're in a situation where you need to have you need to get up and run really fast and you need to get away a potentially life-threatening situation, you want your adrenals to kick in, send out some cortisol, get that HPA kicking in so that your body, that the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis kicking in so that your body knows that there's an imminent threat and that it needs to do something. Excellent. So now what happens is your body has responded to that imminent threat. You've got cortisol kicking into your body, and now it needs to do something with that cortisol. So in your average body, in time, when you start to realize that the threat isn't there, your body can start to calm down. You also might notice that your breathing starts to change. You might start to take deep breaths, like in and out, in and out. I can actually give you a fine example. I just had a personal experience on the weekend. So I don't know if you guys know this, but for like 16 years of my life, I was a folklore dancer, Serbian folklore. And I laugh because it's fun and funny. But when I used to dance, when I like on stage and do performances, I used to have like super anxiety that would come up, performance anxiety, but now I can identify it as probably performance anxiety. And at a point, I would hold my breath, and to the point where I think I had like so little oxygen coming into my body. There might be like a 4-minute performance, and I was like top notch at pretty much holding my breath the whole time. I didn't realize that I was like a breath hold expert. Um, I'd get flushed. People would always be like, "You're so red." And they'd wonder why I wasn't smiling. I wasn't smiling because I couldn't breathe and I couldn't function, but I would still somehow move. I could move and I could do what I needed to do, but I had a really hard time smiling while internally I thought I was dying. Um, Mostly because I felt judged. And maybe I was judging me more than others, but no, it's a Serbian community. Chances are they're probably judging you more. I'm just saying I might be a little racist towards my own people. But if that's possible, anyways, um, acknowledging it here and now. Anyway, so I would get up on stage. I would have like, for one thing, it's a pretty good workout. It's like you're doing a lot of bouncing and jumping and kicking and stuff and moving at the same time. It takes some coordination. And it also would take coordination on how to breathe and do that at the same time. And since I wasn't breathing, what happens is the body starts to think it's dying, right? So if you hold your breath long enough, your body starts to go into like panic. Well, I didn't have a method on how to regulate that or control that. So I'm just in panic. I'm internally in panic, thinking I'm dying and like, oh my God, my heart. And then my muscles would contract and my tongue, to the point where my tongue would contract to where it would cramp. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. It's bizarre. Like my tongue at the back would cramp. I would come out of there where my breath would be maybe as shallow as like just at the base of my throat, like base of my neck, maybe base of my throat, even barely like coming down into my throat. It was shallow, and I would be like hyperventilating. Well, I just thought that was me, and that was just, I didn't notice other people doing that. So I also thought they were just more coordinated in that they could breathe and move at the same time. But now I'm starting to think that it had more to do with having anxiety attacks, performance anxiety, which is interesting. So I go to do this dancing on the weekend, and I am with my kid, and we're sitting there waiting, and like it took a little bit longer than usual to get started because they needed to, the restaurant was filling up. It was at a restaurant. The restaurant was filling up. They needed some people to like finish eating to clear the dance floor. So it's already starting late. So my body's like, oh my God, and more people are coming in, and more people are coming in, and more people are coming in. And I have not performed in front of an audience for 30 years. And I'm going in pretty much cold turkey. And what I did do was a nerd thing, which because I like to count things. I was like, let me make sure that I have my numbers correct on this. Like how many steps this way, how many steps this, how many kicks, how many this, how many steps back, how many blah, blah, blah. I wanted to get my patterns in because I love patterns. I wanted to make sure my patterns were correct. So I obsessively listened to the music over and over to the point where I think I drove my family nuts. So we're in the cafe, and I'm supposed to start to go on, and I'm like, oh. And then I notice my kid's leg is like shaking. I'm like, how are you feeling? And Ziva's like, oh, no, I've been returning anxiety back to you. I'm like, well, thank you, because I am feeling it. I do have that right now. And I just need to be like, who fucking cares? Took some deep breaths, did my own, listened to my own brain and what I would tell other people to do, which is just like regular breathing. I just want to start with regular breathing, in for 5, out for 5. My body starts calming down. I do what I tell other people to do, which is look around. Are there any threats? There were no threats. There were some old ladies, definitely not threatening to me. There was a whole lot of people that were not threatening to me. So I was like, oh, I'm actually okay. Wait a second. I'm the person in the room who knows the most about this than any of them. Oh my God. It kind of like dawned on me that I might actually be the one in the room that knows the most about this, where you go and perform in front of a crowd of Serbians, there is bound to be somebody who's a far better dancer and also a far bigger expert. So I walked into a space where I was not feeling threatened. So helpful. So I could regulate my breath, and I didn't have to buy my old story. And my cortisol started to drop. I could feel it. I can feel a rise and then I can feel a drop, right? So the threat starts to diminish. But then I could actually dance and breathe at the same time, which was crazy. So I could dance and breathe at the same time for the first time in my life. I danced for way too long. So I ended up getting sore, but that wasn't because I was cramping during a 4-minute dance. It was because I danced for 2.5 hours of jumping up and down and like kicking my legs like, a pro. So yeah, yay me. Like it only took me 30 years to figure out what the hell was happening and all the judgments and all the stuff and all these energies and blah, blah, blah. So you might actually not have physically threatening things going on in your life, but you might be picking up energies too. You might be judging yourself and then you're having that compiling on like, oh my God, am I good enough? Performance anxieties, all these other things, blah, 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 heart attack, blah, blah. And then you're like, what's happening to me? I feel like I'm dying. Um, and then you remember to breathe. Why? Because you hear my little voice jumping and go, breathe in for 5, out for 5, in through your nose for 5, out through your mouth for 5. Just start with that. You could do the 4-4-8 breath. You could do many variations. Just start breathing and go from there. It's so convenient to know how to breathe. So also learning how to breathe and coordinate movement. I'm like wowing myself in my own life right now. I'm 50 and I'm like wowing myself with like new capacities because I'm such a nerd. And now I can like see patterns and I can coordinate things with patterns and blah, 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 blah. That's how much of a nerd I am. Anyhow, so that was fun. And why I'm telling you that story is because there was anxiety involved for most of my life. And I feel like I got a grasp on that. There was um, in many different areas. So other things I had anxiety about that were performance anxiety related, I had a handle on, but that one I hadn't tried in 30 years. So I didn't know where I stood on that. I didn't have a reference point to see what I'd healed, where I was at. So as you start to deal with those things that feel like threats, whether it's anxiety or whether it's constant stress, how do you eliminate constant stress? Some of the things like that are constant stressors, poverty is a constant stress. I lived in poverty most of my life, and it's a constant stress. How do you navigate it? Well, one of the things, number one, is learn how to ask, but then even bigger is learn how to receive. And my friend, the owner of this station, will be laughing her ass off for me saying that. Be like, listen to yourself, woman. And I am. I'm listening to myself, woman. So Um, so yeah, so learning to A, ask and B, receive, especially if you ask for something and then you get it. And then remember to be grateful. All right, so those are some things that can help with reducing stress. And also know who to ask. Like you might ask people who are in a similar situation you're in and they can't really do much. So find the resources. Maybe they're community outreach centers or things, especially when it's like in the state of poverty. I did not ask people for food or help or money, and I could have, and I didn't. So I just compounded that for a really long time and would suffer instead of actually asking or um or even like letting people know what it did because I was like afraid, right? So that it's like this weird thing that happens, like I have no money. I have a lot of skills, have a lot of talent, and I'm too afraid to ask for the money for that. Well, then I started to actually ask for the money for that. And then the scale started to shift out of poverty and into assets and into having and things. So the scales start to shift when you start to ask. Yeah. And those scales start to shift when you start to ask and then you start to receive. And then those scales start to shift when you ask, receive, and have gratitude even more starts to show up. So it seems crazy, but stresses can shift. You need to open your heart, your mind, and your voice to actually ask for assistance for that, whatever stress is going on. Saying that to many of my relatives, if they happen to be listening, which I doubt, but if they are, if you don't know who you are, what? If you do know who you are, then you know it's a good time to ask. All right, so how do we reduce stress? We can freaking ask, right, guys? Like keeping it simple, just like I don't know, communication is one of the top things we talk about on this show. Communication and consent, so key. Curiosity, we like all those things. So when you have really high stress signals, you might start to feel like, your blood pressure increases, even your blood sugar will start to go a bit wacky. So one of the things that proper levels of cortisol do is they regulate blood sugar, they manage inflammation, they control, like, normal cortisol levels will help you control blood pressure, support metabolism, helps with your memory, it aids in memory. But excess cortisol, that's where things can get a little wacky. So we will talk about excess cortisol and cortisol insufficiency in the next segment. I meant to in the last one, but I got carried away with stories. I hope my stories were at least funny for you or like entertaining. I will get, I wanted to give you a personal example so that you can now like reflect on your life as to where have you come from in terms of stress or anxiety, and how have you navigated that? Have you navigated things like depression, which is like, so anxiety is like a fight or flight, and depression is more like a freeze. How have you navigated those things? And we'll talk about more of that when we come back. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. We've been talking about cortisol and how it affects your libido. I don't know about you, but when you're in like high stress, is your first thing that you just need peace and space? Or do you need to do something to burn off cortisol? Like what is your go-to? Some people like to meditate and deep breathe, and I'm all for that for sure. Sometimes for me, what I need to do, depending on the situation, like if I'm feeling stressed to the point where I can't move, I will encourage myself to move, even if it's just laying on the floor and rocking my legs back and forth. Not the happy baby thing. I'm talking more about just like bend your legs, have them bent, and then like you have your two knees and you just like back and forth, back and forth. I just get some movement rocking in my hips. So, do you need more space? Do you need more peace? I need oftentimes a little bit of movement, followed by some deep breathing, followed by if it's a really if it is one of those days, sometimes what I would also need after like deep breathing could be working on myself, so I could put my hands on my own body, or I'll ask my husband to put his hand on me. Even it doesn't even have to be sexual, it's just like hand on the heart, and then my body will calm down. It's that weighted feeling that can help with a lot of stress for me. So it's really helpful for you to know what helps for you and your stresses. And if you're stressed to the max where you're then frozen, then do you need movement? I do. I tend to, because I like to do the opposite of what's going on. So if it's that I'm frozen, I want to do movement. And if I've got like an edge where I feel like I'm high as a kite, and by the way, I do know what that feels like. I have done drugs in my day. I haven't for decades, but I remember. I remember a lot. Um, and that zoomy feeling, like I didn't really like it. Luckily for me, that's why I didn't become a drug addict. I didn't like the feeling of it. Um, but those highs where you don't really know how to get out of that, like being on so much, that when I'm that high and it's like a fight or flight high, that's when I need to chill the F out. And then I will do like specific breath work techniques. That's more of the anxiety phase, right? That's where it's like, whether it's a 4-4-8 breath work or the in for 5, out for 5. Sometimes masturbation, that one can just kick that into, just burn off some of that extra heavy doses of cortisol. Just it can help diminish it a bit, or for me it does. And the other things that can work is sometimes just doing anything soothing, like hold your own feet. I know that sounds kind of odd, but if you hold your own feet, um, and just it'll start to connect you to your feet, or even rolling your feet on the ground, like on the edge of your feet, the outside edge of your feet. If you just kind of like roll your foot back and forth, and then from your heel to your toes, and your heel to your toes, but keeping it on like the edge of the foot, that'll start to also, it starts to actually relax your body quite a lot. I'm not going to do it too much here because it might get me to fall asleep. I find certain things that are like rocking motions, and if you can't rock your whole body, but certain rocking motions will help calm the body. That's rocking chairs and babies needing to be rocked and all that sort of stuff. It probably does bring us back into the womb energy of being rocked and swayed in the womb waters. So yeah, just having that kind of roll sensation. You can also like hold your knees and literally like roll back onto your back and then forward if you have the flexibility, and just kind of doing a rocking and rolling back and forth motion to get your spine like on a connected version, just so your spine connects to everything on the ground and you get very grounded. Also, things like restorative yoga, the movement technique that I work on people. I also teach movement exercises, and I have a program it was called Posture for Prosperity, but all of the exercises in there can also, the aligning of the spine can also help the cortisol go down. So if you are in that fight or flight and you need to get your cortisol to go down and you need to de-stress, um, and you're trying things and you're not sure, blah, 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 connect with me. I think that program is under $50. So hopefully that's reasonable for people. And I can't emphasize enough just like learning how to breathe, and then also looking at things that are calming. So take your tech away, get off of your laptop, because all that light coming at your head is overstimulating. Turn off the lights, turn off everything that's stimulating. Maybe get some smells around you that are not abrasive, right? Like I like very earthy tones, so I love burning Palo Santo, and I find it can bring me to calm incredibly fast. People burn sage and cedar, and I'm just like looking at my jar of cedar that I got from my own forest. So burning those things, although burning cedar when it's super dry, you don't really get a cedar smell as much from it. With Palo Santo, you do get a very earthy tone. So do something that helps you feel grounded and earthy. Breathe in that the smoke, if you can, if you don't have like COPD or asthma or something, like enjoy that and just like breathe that in and let your body sink into all that earthiness. It's a much better go-to than throwing yourself at a bottle of alcohol or throwing yourself at a rando for sex. You can do a lot of things to self-regulate that are safe, that are easy, that are super affordable and cheap. It's just a matter of practice. So you don't have to run to the doctor for anxiety pills right away. I'm not against that, by the way. Like there are certain people who absolutely are at a level where they probably need that for a temporary relief. I also encourage you to try a whole bunch of other things too. Try somatic movement, yoga, try things like Pilates, anything that would be like slow, long stretching, any breath work that is going to be breath work that is calming, because there are breath works that will also invigorate too. You want to do calming breath work, movement like Tai Chi, especially for anybody over 40. Tai Chi is fantastic, super lowers your cortisol, brings in the energy, helps invigorate you. And you can also learn things like sexual Tai Chi, the energy that you can flow. It's more like a sexual qigong, but you can utilize energy in a sexual way too. It can be really fun. So just know that whatever you're experiencing, if you're experiencing like that you're not wanting to move and you're depressed, your first go-to is to really get yourself, even if it's like one step, to get yourself to the bathroom to brush your teeth. And then give yourself praise for getting out of bed and brushing your teeth. And then maybe you just go back to bed. That's okay. The next day, you might get up, brush your teeth, and have a shower. Excellent. But every time you do something, you need to acknowledge it and acknowledge it out loud. Like, I got up today, I brushed my teeth, had a shower, got food, checked my messages. So I've fallen into funks before where I want to do absolutely nothing and I'd rather just wither into nothingness. I've been there. I know it well. And luckily, those times were lucky for me. My child was a motivating factor, and I would look and go, wow, I need to do something because I'm the one looking after you. I need to survive and thrive for you. And then sometimes you need that. You need it to do it for somebody else. But the first time I went through a massive depression, I didn't have that somebody else to do it for. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a child. And I was in a big ass funk. And so I had to find purpose in me and for me to get my reason to get out of bed. And I found it. I wasn't bedridden for like weeks or something. I just had zero desire and everything was boring in life and like life sucked. And I wanted to die. It was also post being violated physically, and I just would rather have not been alive at the time. And that shifted. A lot of that has never come back. So sometimes once you shift it, you can actually keep that shifted and move forward in different ways. So if you're looking for some things to know, like, how do I know? Well, first of all, you can get your cortisol levels checked, but you could walk in there on a day where you're having high stress and it's going to read that you're highly stressed. So that's something you're going to need to do. I would say if you're going to get cortisol checked, you're going to have to get it tested in different environments and under different stress conditions just to see what's actually happening. See if your body can bring it back down within a normal time frame. So if you do have excessive cortisol, you might find that you've got, like I was talking about, the buffalo hump or the dowager's hump, some people call it too. You might also find you get weight gain, especially in the face and the abdomen. You might find you bruise more too and have breakouts like acne breakouts and high blood pressure and high blood sugar and sometimes potentially pre-diabetic or diabetic and musculoskeletal issues, muscle weakness, especially in arms and legs, and there's so many. If you want to look up the the list of excessive cortisol, go for it. I wanted to give you guys a few that are really common. Also, things like headaches on a regular basis, or poor sleep, and insomnia. Those are all signs of high cortisol. The number one thing I would encourage you to do is, number one, if you are drinking caffeine of any kind, get off of that. It will increase your cortisol. So caffeine puts your body, the amount of coffee. So here's some research for you. The amount of coffee that is in one 250 ml coffee, like a standard Tim Hortons coffee, will have enough. That amount of caffeine will have the impact on your heart that could stop your heart. I'm not going to get into all the details on that. But it has the potential to stop your heart. The reason why it doesn't is because your adrenals kick in to start to regulate that. So if you're drinking a lot of caffeine, you're going to have, the chances are you're going to have excessive cortisol. Your body is going to try and find a way to regulate it. And it can only do that for so long. Eventually you will exhaust it. Eventually, the hypothalamic, the HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal connection, will be so out of whack, it's not going to know what it's doing. And then you'll be like, hey, do I have a thyroid issue? What's going on with that? Like, there's things that will happen. And sometimes it's the simplest thing as remove the caffeine, increase water. See what that does for you for 3 weeks. And I know it's not easy to get off of caffeine. And if you have a coffee addiction, you might want to wean down from regular coffee to decaf to none. One of my really good friends did that, and she was like a crazy coffee addict. I would say like 10 years ago, she could drink an entire pot by herself. Mind you, she was getting up at 5 a.m. and doing a lot of crazy things, raised 3 kids on her own. And then she went from that to, out of necessity, I had her on some stuff to help her with some chronic pain. And so she needed to be off of caffeine for that. And out of necessity, she did that. She weaned herself down. So she weaned herself to decaf. And then now she doesn't even drink decaf. She doesn't even crave it. She doesn't even want it. And I thought I would never see the day that that friend of mine was not drinking coffee. It kind of blew my mind. So I love that. And I love that she could do that. So we're going to head to our last commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. I bet some of you are wondering, how is it that cortisol actually blocks pleasure? But let's look at some of the things that cortisol does. Excessive cortisol can lead to things like muscle tension, low libido, hormone imbalances in general. Can also have emotional effects like irritability, feeling disconnected, and having a complete lack of desire. That is biological, because if you are in fight or flight, there's no desire to create offspring. And our basically libido is driven by some, even if you're in a non-heterosexual relationship, there's still a libido drive to try and procreate. Doesn't mean you want babies, but the drive, the sex drive, is very much about survival. And So if you're doing survival to try, if you're doing it from a place of survival to try and whether it's to have children, to create offspring, or whatever, survival so that you have connection to other people, there's a reason why there's a desire to have sex for survival reasons. So when you're in stress, those go away. You don't have the need for it. You're just surviving. You're not actually desiring to have those things in your life. And when you're in fight or flight, you're in fight or flight. Just imagine somebody's flying away from you or running away from you. Are they present? No, they're not. Are they able to communicate? Probably not. Is there going to be anger and rage and feelings that are, unnameable, probably, and whole mix of that? Yes, that's going to happen. And is there something that, that you can do in order to change that? There absolutely is. And we did talk about a few of those. Like I started with, remember to breathe. Like breathing is so important. And I know that sounds so simple, but it's so not, because I see it all the time in people. People forget to breathe. They breathe shallow. They don't even breathe into their bellies. They don't even breathe deeply. And especially I noticed that when people are on tech, they like completely hold their breath. Also, like the posture of being on like a cell phone where your head is down looking at like a cell phone, that is actually shutting off oxygen. You're getting limited oxygen. It's like having a kink in a hose. You might get a little water out of that, but you're not going to get a lot. And so like a kink in a throat, you're going to get a little bit of oxygen in there, but not a lot. So proper posture increases your oxygen intake, helps your body function better, helps your brain function better, decreases your cortisol, helps your body reset. So these are all super important things to do, along with looking at what's going on with your diet. Are you eating a lot of things that are stimulants? Aside from caffeine, are you eating things like sugars and high carb things that are increasing energy, but then you're not burning them off? If you're burning them off, that's one thing. But caffeine in general, I would say, is a really good one to start with, cutting out of your body if you have super high cortisol, because it is just, it's gonna eventually get you. So personally, what I like to do too, I like to do movement and stretching of all kinds. Those are super helpful. Walking is super easy and helpful. Me, backwards walker, helps with posture at the same time as you get more oxygen in. Also, there is information out there now that like for every step you do backwards is equal to 10 forwards. One reason is because your posture is different. You're taking in more oxygen. You're also engaging different muscles. So it can be a different workout. So if you did 1,000 steps backwards every day, it would be equivalent to 10,000 forward. So there's no reason to not be able to pull that off. It's only like 12 minutes to do that, even if you're doing it pretty slow. Also, doing some pleasure practices on the daily, whether it's self-touch, which doesn't mean that you necessarily have to masturbate, but you could. And having sensual rituals for yourself. Maybe you're lighting incense, maybe you're turning on music that you love, maybe you're getting that bath going, getting into your cozy sleeping clothes, wearing something cozy, having a nice cup of tea, non-decaf, in the morning or before bed, surrounding your environment with things that help you calm your cortisol. So like avoiding the news. Who needs the news when it's going to work you up and make you want to get in a fight with somebody, or that you want to go out and kill leaders of the world? Maybe avoid the news for a while if you're in really high stress. This is a suggestion. And surround yourself like in your environment, put things in your environment that help you feel calm, like having really loud looking decorations might make your body feel alarmed and not calm. So your environment has a massive play on that too. So, if you're a massive hoarder, you might find that you're stressed because the clutter that surrounds you is also the clutter in your brain. And I'm so aware of that too. And so I take care of my dad's bookkeeping, and I had a bunch of his papers around, and I was like, I have to take care of this for my own sanity. So I did, and it actually helped a tremendous amount to be able to feel like moving forward. If you need any assistance and you want to create if you want your own like personal blueprint of a program to help you get through your cortisol excesses, to get you some targets, to help you to move through all of this stress, you can connect with me through milicajelenic.com, and you can just book a free consultation.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach Milica Jelenic. We'll return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.